All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning in to the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So what I want to get into today is about creating something. I think a lot of times when we want to create something, we have to realize it's not just about us creating something for the most part. It's about seeing the big picture on how all the other components coming together to create what you want to create. And I think a lot of people below this, I guess, is how the way I want to word it. They don't realize, or I should say, when they think about creating something, they only see themselves almost doing all the work and envisioning what they have to do to get this accomplished, when a lot of times it's sitting back and saying, wait a minute, it's not how am I going to get this accomplished, how am I going to create the right team to get this accomplished. And it's also about kind of seeing or having foresight to say, okay, what does this look like now? Obviously, what's it going to look like at the end? We kind of always have that. We don't kind of look inside the middle. And I'm just going to give you some examples. So what I've gone through in my life a lot of times, I always just looked at it as conquering it almost solo. I almost looked at going to war when I wanted to create something. It's me versus everyone, right? Or it's me just getting this done. I don't care how I have to get it done. Once I acknowledge that I want to complete something, I'm like a lunatic. I won't stop till I complete it. At the beginning, I'm kind of a slow starter. I'm trying to figure it out, and it takes me a while to get going. But once I start building that momentum up, but the one thing I think I lack more than anything is, and to a certain degree still do, is putting the right pieces together. And a lot of times you got to realize when you want to create something, again, it depends on what you want to create. So if you want to create something small independently, like draw a picture, do photos, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about taking on a much larger task from scratch. So like if I wanted when I was thinking about making films, I really was so unknowledgeable on how much effort, time, the team, how many components, all these different things, locations, camera, lighting, it goes on, and from casting to feeding them to scheduling, and it never ended. I didn't look at that way. I looked at me kind of like naively just making a film, like, oh, I'm directing this film. It's me telling everybody kind of what to do, and I'm going to write the screenplay, and they're going to be listening, and we're going to get everything that I wanted to envision. I wasn't looking at how much money it would take, again, how much time and effort. It was just so ridiculous how what I thought. And it could be any endeavor you want to go after. It's going to be a long process, right? Even if you're just a high school student or you're a college kid or whatever. I sometimes, though, think the more naive you are, it's kind of the more you'll kind of go after it, though, at the same time. So sometimes being, I don't want to say dumb, or just naive, or just not knowing what you should know, just makes you kind of go after, right? Because if you knew a lot of times how much time and effort it's going to take to sometimes do something, then you're going to back off. You're going to be like, holy shit. And I think a lot of people do have that gene where they're always looking to cop out, right? If they don't know enough about it, or they know too much about it, they kind of just quit. And that's not what I'm talking about here. So what I really am talking about is figuring out how to kind of step outside yourself again, look at yourself and say, okay, I want to create this. Now, I've been creating so many things in my life. I think I recently feel exhausted, truthfully, because I'm about the experience more than I am anything else in life. So it really wasn't, I realized about me, is how much money I'm always going to make at the end of the line. It's what I went through and what I learned through the process, which is very interesting because I was a horrible student in school. But because I think I had a huge imagination, and I was always being put in a position where I couldn't accomplish what I want to accomplish because I was sitting in this seat for hours and hours and hours, week after week, not getting what I want to get done. That's why I think I kind of excelled in sports, where I could kind of move freely and, I can do things that I like doing. Even if I'm going to a gym, I was creating my body. But when it came to me I may have been a horrible student, but if I decided to create something even at a younger age, I was able to do it. And it could be as stupid as just, I remember just getting something accomplished. My teacher once said to me, hey, anybody who learns how to juggle doesn't have to do homework for a week. This was actually in summer school. That shows how bad of a student I really was. And he says, I'm not going to teach you how to do that. And this is before the internet, obviously. This is the very early 80s. And he said, I'm going to just tell you one thing is you've got to always keep one thing in the air, I think is the way he worded it. So if you're going to use balls, one ball always has to be in the air. I went home and taught myself how to juggle that night. And I'm pretty good hand-eye, or at least I was back then. I knew I had three things in my hand to juggle. You can do it with two, but what he was talking about was really juggling with three. And by him telling me just keep one in the air, so I would just throw one in the air and wait. And then you have to throw the other one and catch that one. And I always kept saying, one's got to be in the air, Rich, regardless of what hand. So it took me a while. So I came in the next day and he goes, did anybody do it? Not one person even, I don't even think, went and tried it. And then I said, I did it. I think I can juggle. He brought me up, and then I says, what would you like me to juggle? And he says, well, I'm going to have you crumple up 3 pieces of paper. And he's like, that's going to be even harder on you because it's light. It'll float longer, like it'll be in the air maybe. You think it is, or it isn't maybe, or maybe it is or isn't. But it's harder to kind of catch a piece of paper. It could easily kind of bounce off your hand, where if it was like 3 tennis balls or racquetball, balls would be a lot easier. I did it. He was shocked I did it. And again, in my mind, I was able to do those type of things. I'm just using for an example, even from a physical standpoint. If I put my mind to lifting certain weights or whatever, designing certain things for a look in my closet, and I think that's because of my father probably. So I was really caught up in, I could really go, and once I go after something, I'm going to go after it full force. But as I got older and older, I started to write screenplays, but back to two things recently happened just in the last couple of years. So I was creating an app called the You Around app. That's an app to help anyone in a time of need. And again, I sat back and said, all right, I got to obviously get somebody who's going to program this. And I know I have to hire programmers and I have to do this and this and this. And I kind of, took a step back. How long is this going to take me? I'm thinking this amount. I did a bunch of studying on the complications of creating an app. So I know I couldn't, but I'd have to hire someone else. And whatever the case may be, again, took so much longer. And what I think a lot of times happens is when we're creating is every day something changes. And I went through this with my partner regarding a program that I did this last year and a half too, called Mastering Self-Confidence. I thought it would only take me really 3 to 6 months. I'm on a year and a half. I'm still not done. But we keep revamping that. We keep revamping the website. We had to keep revamping the webinar. And I finally told him yesterday, because he wanted to revamp the website again and do some other things. And I said, we can keep going on forever. That's the thing about creating a lot of times certain things, right? It's not always like, say you take a house, you create it, then you're done with the house, right? If it's that cut and dry, that's different. But if you're creating things, say, like a program or even editing a film, you can edit a film for the rest of your life. Cut it here, add audio here, add some backdrop here, let's do this, let's do that. I don't like that, let's go reshoot it. I didn't like the lighting here, let's do this. It's kind of like a screenplay too, I always said. It's never really set in stone until the day you shoot it, because it's always changing. And even while you're shooting it, you may be changing the word, the dialogue, the fluency's not there. I'm just using that for an example. But when you are creating something, again, say on the internet, it could be a website, it could be a business, marketing, or whatever. You got to realize a lot of times it's never going to end because it's constantly conforming into something else. It's taking shape. And what you sometimes think you like may not be what you like. You may be like, wow, I blew that. And that's what was happening with my app. First, it was very simple. I'm not going to get into the whole concept of the app, but it was very cut and dry. And then as we went along, you're realizing, wow, that's a problem. They don't understand what that means. Oh, well, you mean for me to do that? That doesn't work? Oh, I want it to look like this. Oh my God, that would take millions of dollars. That's out. Well, I wanted to do this. Well, that's not going to work because you structured it this way. And before you know it, you have to. It's a puzzle when you create something, right? And you're kind of putting all these pieces together. But a lot of times, it's missing a lot of pieces. So when you look at it, you're like, oh my God, I just saw the big puzzle being completed on a whole. But now that I'm getting into it, I didn't realize how much money, again, time, I'd have to get another person. So even with the app, I got this one guy doing the program. Then he actually ended up stealing it from me and then trying selling it. So I had to fight that. And then I got another guy. He's too slow. Then I got to have a graphic artist do this. And then I had to have somebody else, just all these different types of things. I don't have to keep getting into it, but you get the point. I never knew it would take all these different components. Again, even creating just a simple app, because I was at the point in my life where I'm like, let me just do something I can kind of wrap my hands around. But again, what I realized with the app was I needed to depend on somebody so much more, because I had created a website for it. You were around, app.com. That was very simple for me. Like doing certain things now that I've done them over 20 years is just like I can outline something and I could just kind of envision it and I can do that. But here's the thing, when you're creating something, realize too, do you have the personality or the knowledge, I should say, to hire the right person? And not only when you hire the right person or get the right person, will you be able to work with that person fluently and consistently and over a long period of time? Right? Because unless it's something small, you're going to knock out in a week or two. That's one thing. But if you plan on creating something that may take 6 months, a year, because a lot of people are going to claim they work really hard for you, even if you pay them or not, but they're distracted like everybody else. You're only going to get so much out of them, right? And that goes for you too. You may work somewhere and they're only going to get so much out of you, right? And as you know, as time goes on, you have issues a lot of times. You may not have an issue. That person may have an issue. That person may run out of money. That person may quit. That person may just move on to something else. And that's what happened with me with the app. I finally got exhausted from the app because it was actually testing it too. I had to keep testing it with other people, and I was exhausted from, again, I wasn't thinking when I was creating the app. I knew I had to test it, but I just thought it would be a lot simpler to test with people. And it wasn't, because you have all these issues when you're going through this test process. And I knew it took a lot of time to create an app and a lot of money. But I didn't realize, again, just from a testing standpoint, what the issues you can go through. And it exhausted me, and I was burnt out on it. And that's when I kind of shuffled to the program, the Mastering Self-Confidence program I created, because I can control that. I was able to create the program based off my book, Wingman. I was also able to take a lot of the concept of it. So I ended up doing audio clips, which was like, I have 45 hours of audio clips in there. I have videos, I have bonus material. So I have all these other things. And I definitely have a partner doing that. So he was teaching me, Rich, hey, let's do some YouTube videos. Let's do a podcast so we can attach to the program. Again, wasn't thinking about that when I did the program. I was just thinking program. But they're like, well, you got to build a following, kind of attach yourself to that. And I never wanted to be back in front of the camera. Before you know it, they're like, Rich, come on, you got to do some videos. I was like, oh, shit, okay. Before you know it, hey, the one thing I did want to do was a podcast for like the last 10 years, start interviewing people and kind of doing what I'm doing now. I think works really well with me. And I wanted to do that. And then he's like, well, then do that. I'm like, before you know it, just to make the program, now I have to have extra Facebook pages for public, profile. And then you got you have a page where you're uploading your podcast. And of course I want to share them on, besides it being on like Google or Apple or iTunes or, Pandora and all, or is it Pandora? What's the other one? I can't remember, but I wanted it to be everywhere. So it's more and more work, uploading it, sharing it, hashtagging it, putting it on my personal social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all these things. I'm not, with the program, I was just thinking, again, creating a program kind of like I did with a book. That's the one things I will say about the book that I liked, is creating a book was very nice because it was it was tranquil, and I knew I had total control of it. And I wasn't even obsessed with getting it published, really. I didn't care. I just wanted to self-publish it because I always wanted to have the rights to my own book, and I didn't want to like kind of all the horror stories and all the stats I heard regarding it. Now, if you're famous or you've got a really unbelievable connection regarding publishing, and they can get it out there and sell you hundreds of thousands or whatever, thousands of books, even millions, that's wonderful. But I wasn't that person. And that was really cool. Screenplays were brutal because I had to create screenplays. Then once you create them, you got to go raise money to shoot them. And then after you shoot them, you got to edit them. Then after you edit them, you got to market it, or you got to get distribution. That's a never-ending thing. But even a company, if you plan on starting a company, because I've started other companies, I'm not saying I've been successful in some, not successful in many others, because I think I get more caught up in the creativity and back to the experience. I love experience things with people, but when you set out to start your own company, either from scratch, and I've also purchased companies For one is when you start from scratch, you don't, again, realize all the other things that are most likely going to come at you. And then at the end of the day, if you sell your company or when you're in it, you're like, in hindsight, God, I wish I would have done this, I would have done that. Well, the truth is you didn't have the knowledge a lot of times. Some do, some don't. And again, if you buy a business, a lot of times the person you're buying it from, unless you really know them really well, they're hiding a lot of things from you. You didn't realize, your employees were these type of people. You didn't realize marketing would cost that much money. You didn't realize that a competitor now is down the street, or now you're realizing, ads cost this much money. You didn't realize these people would quit on you because there's a new owner. You didn't realize maybe the rent would increase the way it could go on forever. But what I want you to kind of do is, or just as far as my advice is, when you want to start creating things, really, again, take a step back and say, how much more homework do I have to do so I don't make a mistake? As I think a lot of times we start heading in certain directions and we get kind of caught up in the moment and thinking it's going to be a certain way and it's going to be a wonderful thing. And I don't want to, distract you from or take you away from going after your dreams or whatever you want to do. Just make sure you know what you're doing and you genuinely have the passion to complete it and keep moving forward. But at the same time, you have to understand when it is time to fold and get out. And I think a lot of people don't know when to do that. And that's why a lot of people end up going broke in their business, or they become outdated, or they're always holding on to something. And I'll go back to my buddies who were stockbrokers. And I learned this at a young age when I was making a lot of money, I always thought the money was going to come in, right? Obviously, we all do. But when you're making a lot of money is when you really should start taking your money. You can invest in whatever you choose. It could be real estate or other businesses, whatever you choose. But that is the time to start making your moves into other directions a lot of times. Because what happens is when you're making that money, this is what I usually saw. People don't want to change because they're making so much money in their business, or they're making good money. So they're afraid to try anything else because they're afraid to fail, or they don't want to take good money and put it in the bad money. I get that 100%, right? But that's really when you need to start learning how to take that money coming in and understand that this company may not be generating this money forever. If it does, more power to you. God bless you. But usually a lot of companies go down. They start going up. They do really well. And if it's a really good type of business, then you're going to have tons of competitors. Then they're going to start undercutting you. You're going to have competition. A lot of things can happen. Price gouging, all these different types of things. Whatever you're offering changes, right? You may change. People may quit. Somebody may leave you, start their own, whatever the case may be. But in the stockbroker position, I used to tell my buddies, now is the time to take that money and keep reinvesting in other things, because when this takes a shit on you, you're going to be fucked. Most never listened to me. It was quite interesting because they were making so much money thinking they'll never take a shit. And guess what? Most of them took a shit, especially in Chicago with the Merc and the Board of Trade. Almost all my friends took a shit, I would say, a lot of them. But some other guys made so much money, they were cool, right? Some are smart. Some have a lot of money. That works. So now what happens is when you're a business then or a stockbroker, now say they're not making as much money. They start losing a little money, slowly but surely. Now they're freaking out. Now they don't want to take any of their money and invest it anywhere because they're freaking out that they're making less and less money. So they start backpedaling. Now they either try to start catching up to or getting back to where they were making the same money, or they just keep losing their money, right? And I've seen this over and over again with so many guys in business. So now it just keeps going down, down, down. And guess what? For the most part, most of them had homes that they get a certain lifestyle. Now they're making less money. Now they're losing homes. They're losing cars. Now what? Now they're going down, 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 down. And eventually, now what do? Now they either have to get another job, start another business, but now they have no money usually, or they're scared shitless. Now they're at the point where what do? When you had the money was when you need to make the moves. Also, you kind of got to put yourself in a position where if the economy does hypothetically take a shit, you're kind of in a position where you don't get decimated. I've been decimated before regarding those things. I've lived a certain lifestyle at one time where I had a lot of bills, but I had some medical issues with my daughter and things just change immediately financially when you go through something massive like that. And I'm not talking something for a few months. I'm talking years and years. The only one who's going to protect you is you, right? Even from a creative standpoint. So, again, I just gave you that story. That's just something I wanted to share with you. But if you are successful right? And you are comfortable, and I'm not telling anybody to do anything, right? If you're a doctor, everybody has their own things. These are kind of for people that are, I guess you could say, more entrepreneurial. If you're a doctor and you're consistently probably going to make money for the rest of your life, but who knows? You could get sued out your ass too. Who knows, right? Or anything. You could end up in a car accident and end up paralyzed from the waist down. Something can happen to anybody, right? But the quicker you realize to protect yourself, even from not only financial, but from a creative perspective, make sure you do your homework. And I've drained myself financially, emotionally, even mentally, even. I mean, everything, making films. It took such a toll on me. It was almost like a crack, like addicted, like people are addicted to drugs or crack. That was like like movies. I was so obsessed with making movies. I look back at it now and say, wow, why were you that obsessed? Were you insecure? Or what? I didn't feel insecure, and it wasn't like I had to do it to become famous. I guess I just wanted to voice my opinion in this genre of, or this artistic form of making movies. I just love making movies, and I love sports. But again, did that, you got to look at it from an artistic standpoint. Did it help me or hurt me? Again, I had so many incredible experiences. I also learned so much. You learn so much when you start creating. And you start creating things you want to create, not doing things that everybody else wants you to create. And I also loved collaborating with people that were creating things to say, hey, Rich, would you do this with me, or would you help me here or there? And I think that would be the way to go. If you have a certain idea and you want to create something, get around somebody who's created it, but not only created it, but was successful at it. Because they can teach you something in a week, a month, that could take 10 years. It reminds me of my buddy used to say, we'd always be spending money doing all these different things. And he'd always go, why do I have to pay so much money to learn? Or why do I lose so much money? I always am losing money to learn. And I'm like, because we probably never surrounded ourselves with the right people to learn from. They would teach us not to do that, right? Or we would have to study and figure that out. And I think that goes for a lot of people, especially when creating certain things. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. So, just definitely, if you plan on creating something, step outside and figure out the whole plan. It's not ever going to be most likely just about you, unless, like I said, unless you're the one drawing the picture, you're taking a photo. But if you plan on creating things, I don't care if it's even maybe if you're a designer with clothes, but usually you're still going to want other people to kind of come in and help. You may not be able to do everything you need to do, so you're going to have to collaborate. How much collaboration? How much time does that take? But those are kind of simple. But when you want to start doing something much bigger, creating a business, or like I said, anything else. And here's the thing too, if you can't do everything, don't worry about it. A lot of times we want to take on the whole thing, and I get it, and you got to learn in the process. But at the beginning, a lot of times you're not that good. You may even think you're good. I don't even care if it's a website. You may go online and be like, oh, Wix is free and this and that. It looks good. But if you get around somebody who really knows how to make a really great website, you might want to spend the money, and you design it. And how I usually design my websites, I draw them on a piece of paper and I do a page by page like you're going through a magazine. I'm like, all right, here's the home page. You click here. I turn the page. This is what I want that to look like. I want this to look like this. You turn the page. I show webmasters. They're like blown away because they're like, Rich, this is so unbelievable. It's not like 5,000 emails. And I also draw exactly what I want on the photo, like what I want it to look like, each page. And then I have arrows written what I want written. So that's just how I create that. And I let them do that. I'm probably at the point where I could probably create my own websites. But I also like collaborating and saying, well, and they'll come in and go, Rich, well, that doesn't work there because why don't we try that? Or why don't we do this? This space is here that way or that color. And I'm like, wow, yeah, that works out better. So be open-minded to like really accept that you're not a lot of times that good. And learn, again, from others, but you're going to have to spend money. A lot of people don't want to spend money, and they want to create all this shit. And one thing is it looks like shit, right? Because you created it, and you're not that good at it yet. It doesn't mean you shouldn't create it. What I'm saying is you should either team up with somebody or have somebody create what you want and then kind of figure out how they created that. And that goes for a business as well. You know, a lot of people think they're so much smarter than they are. They're really not. And when you go to buy a business or start a business, you may want to hire people that know a lot more about that business than you. You know, what's that saying? You want to be the dumbest person in the room? You know, you hear that all the time. You want to surround yourself with smart people because they're only going to bring you up to that level. And a smart person always attaches, from a creativity standpoint, the best. You look at some of the best films ever made. They had some of the best actors, directors, producers. I'm just using, for example, the best teams. A lot of times, they may not always in sports have the all full around best team per player, but they have the best unit. That makes sense. The coach, everything, everything works. The owner's very intelligent, obviously. The GM, the coach, the assistant coach, if it's offense, defense, and players. It's a unit, right? And that's, if you're creating something, you want to create that unit. All right? I'm going to leave it at that. If you change, you can also check out my YouTube channel. It's just Rich Celenza. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter as well. So I'm always going to be posting stuff there. Also, my Mastering Self-Confidence program, I try to help men find the woman or women of their dreams, even if they've been through a bad breakup or divorce. And I'm always posting things like fashion, fitness, and hygiene related. That's why I like to go on my podcast and kind of go off the cuff a little bit, something different. So if you're traveling, safe travels, and I wish you nothing but the best.